Hello everyone, and this is Be Better Gamer here, and welcome to my WWF No Mercy Let's Play video. This is part 2 of an eventual 10-part series where I am 100%ing the European Championship. If you haven't watched my other Let's Play videos, please do so. I have a lot of fun making them. I put a lot of effort into doing research, and I try to have a good time, and I really would love to hear people's feedback. I've done the light heavyweight championship 100%, so all those videos are up on my channel. There's a playlist, and yeah, this is part 2 of my European Championship now. Part 1 was with Val Venus, who I'm going to be fighting for the title now. Usually every championship mode, I shouldn't say usually every, some of the championship modes always start out with like the championship match, and you know, a lot of the times you could win or lose, and that determines your path that you take. But the European Championship path is pretty interesting because you'll see later on when I do all of them, but when you do them as a new contender, you don't necessarily have to lose at all to open up different paths. So every time you do the European title, you win your first match, which is very interesting, and I think is pretty unique for all of them, except the Intercontinental title. That's the only other one where you don't lose the first match. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Anyway, that's just something I noticed today when I was going over the paths. I didn't notice it before, but yeah, I'm playing as Tess. He only held the title for once, but it's the longest reigning title he had in all of WWE. He held the title for 69 days, which is kind of ironic because he's fighting Val Venus, which is longer than Val Venus's reign too, but don't tell Val Venus that. But yeah, he multiple time champion in WWE, albeit very brief with a lot of those titles. He was the WCW World Tag Team Champion with Booker T in WWE. This was at the time when WWE bought WCW. He was the Hardcore Champion 2 times, the Intercontinental Champion 1 time, and the World Tag Team Champion 1 time with Booker T as well. And he's also Canadian, which I mentioned in my last video with Val Venus. Val Venus is Canadian, and it's just very interesting, you know, this European title. It started out with like the significance of being a title that was gonna be defended in Europe, or at least that was the story we were led to believe. And British Bulldog was the first European champion. I think at the time he might have been the only European wrestler, you know, in the company. Because I really can't think of anyone back then that was also European. I mean, maybe someone was, and it's just not ringing a bell. But you know, all the people in the tournament were American or Canadian, because Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Vader, Too Cold Scorpio, yeah, they were all. So that's just interesting. The European name was just a name. It didn't really, you know, it wasn't really significant. It's not like they fought a European style. It's not like everyone was throwing European uppercuts around. But Tess was the champion. He was actually the champion after No Mercy came out. He won the title on an episode of Raw on January 22nd, 2001. He beat William Regal, who was actually European. William Regal was in his second reign. So this is like 2 months after No Mercy. He finally won the European title, and it's where he had most success as a champion. He would lose the title to Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania 17, which was actually a pretty solid match. Wasn't, you know, mind-blowing and crazy, but you know, Eddie Guerrero matches usually are always good, and I thought Test was a decent worker. I always expected a lot more from Test, as weird as that sounds. Like, you know, like he was my older brother or something when I was watching him. Like, come on, Tess, you could do it. Oh, that match was kind of average. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I remember when he was in the King of the Ring, and you know, really seemed like he was gonna go far and win it. Did he win it? I don't think he did. But yeah, I don't know. I had high hopes for him, and you know, right around the time before No Mercy came out, oh, actually, I should say right around the time WrestleMania 2000 came out. You know, Tess was in the whole feud with Triple H and DX, because Triple H and DX were feuding with the McMahons, and Test was you know, dating Stephanie McMahon on camera, and you know, it was all for the storyline. And Triple H eventually, you know, kidnaps Stephanie, and while she's drugged up, marries her, and that starts. And then Stephanie turns out to be in on it, and she betrays her father. And you know, it's like, oh wow, Test is caught up in the middle of all this. So you think that's gonna propel him to be feuding with Triple H and everything, and that only lasted a little bit. So I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. But yeah, if you haven't figured it out by now, I haven't said anything about it, but I guess I should talk about it. So my Let's Plays, thank you for joining me. If this is your first time watching it, and like I said before, check out my other videos, please. I really would appreciate your feedback and your comments. I'm really liking all the comments and feedback I'm getting, guys and gals. Keep sending them. I look forward to reading them every day. I don't have the opportunity to read them probably like right when you send them, but I do eventually get to them. So please keep sending them to me. Because I will find the time. You know, my schedule isn't really consistent, so but I do read every comment. I do appreciate it. Basically with these Let's Plays, I'm going to talk about the gameplay of No Mercy as much as I can. I've been playing this game for over 15 years, not straight, but you know, enough that I feel like I'm an expert on it, so much so that I play on the expert difficulty. But like I've mentioned before, No Mercy is actually not that hard. You will see me do some things that might seem strange, and hopefully if I see myself doing things that are strange, I'll explain them. But a lot of these matches are pretty straightforward. If I run into any rough spots, I'll explain how to get out of them, or some tips and tricks I've learned over the years for No Mercy. But yeah, Test has actually a pretty good moveset in this game. I like a lot of the moves he does, like right there, the 5 minutes carry to, like, you know, the fall away slam, or I don't know, whatever you would call that move. It's kind of like a reverse F5, but he's got like the pump handle slam, he's got the sit out power bomb, he's got the falling away power bomb, which I went for right there, and then Edge countered. Edge also a fellow Canadian, and at a brief time, I think, what was it? Edge's sister married Test, or Test's sister married Edge? I don't know. They got divorced anyway. It didn't last long. But yeah, one time they were brother-in-laws because of that. Got the special, and Edge is fighting it, but I'm gonna pick him up pretty easily. And oh, so I've been meaning to talk about it real quick before I get into the year in review and the historical context of Test. I think it's interesting that in this game, compared to Revenge, when you do your special taunt, the guy doesn't get up. You know, in WCW NWO Revenge, developed by AKI as well, when you have your special and the guy's on the ground and you go for your special taunt for the first time to activate your special meter, the guy will always get up, and I thought that was always pretty cool. In No Mercy, that doesn't happen, and I keep forgetting to mention that in my other videos because I kind of miss it. I kind of like it. And in a lot of the more modern wrestling games, obviously they're not developed by the same people, but they have that feature, and I think it's a neat feature because it's kind of reflective of, you know, what you see in actual wrestling. Usually they'll do the taunt and the guy will automatically be in the position for them to be hit with the special. So yeah, I mean, also, but you know, honestly, when I do think about it, it's kind of cool. It's kind of good that they don't always get up, because sometimes you want to hit your special and then just like maybe if you have a top rope special, you want to, you know, run to the top rope real quick and hit them. And that was always a pain in Revenge. Like if, let's say I was playing as like Juventud Guerrera and I want to do my 450 splash, I'd have to be careful about how I taunted, because if I taunted and they got up, then I would have to reposition them all over again and then go for the 450 splash, and hopefully they stay down, because in Revenge they still could get up even though you just hit them with your special. So maybe that's why they changed it. I don't know. Here comes British Bulldog, the first European champion. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about him. I'll do a playthrough with British Bulldog later, actually. So that's coming I think that's one of my final European videos. So yeah, and so also with these Let's Play, when I talk about the gameplay, I like to talk about the year in review, I call it, which is basically the historical context of the game. Now, the game was most likely being developed right after WrestleMania 2000, which came out in October of '99, and No Mercy was released in November of 2000. So yeah, Test at late '99, it was the whole Stephanie McMahon thing, and at Survivor Series '99, Triple H was involved in a triple threat match for the title against Big Show and The Rock, if I'm remembering correctly. I should have wrote it down, but I didn't. I didn't write who he was facing, but I know it was the Big Show because Big Show won. And it was because the McMahons kind of interfered and caused them to lose. Test wasn't on that pay-per-view, but it's still significant because 2 weeks later, Test and Stephanie McMahon were supposed to have their wedding on Raw, and that's when Triple H revealed that he secretly drugged Stephanie and then married her, which I'm sure is not legal, no matter, even if they did get married, quote-unquote. I mean, excuse me. It always happens. I always have to clear my throat. I don't have to clear my throat all day, and then when I do these recordings, I have to clear my throat 1,000 times. Anyway, that's just me getting mad at my throat. What was funny about that was, and I watched that Raw when it happened, and I was like, wait a minute. He recorded himself, forcing her to be married. Like, she's asleep, and they're like in the drive-thru, right? And he's like, oh yeah, I do, like making voices for her, and it's like, we see it all on camera. Like, this is so not legal. First of all, he kidnapped her, and second of all, drugged her, and it's all on footage. But like, they go through it, and in order to resolve it, instead of taking it to law enforcement, it's like, we're gonna have a match about it. Because that's wrestling. But yeah, it makes me wonder how the angle would have played out if Vince McMahon called the authorities, and then Stephanie McMahon had it revealed that way, that she was in on it the whole time. That would have been funny. So this is where things get kind of interesting for Test, because, okay, his fiance was just stolen from him, so he's pissed off about it. And he starts feuding with DX and Triple H that month. But then, like, that's pretty much it. They beat him up a bunch of times, and by the time the Armageddon pay-per-view rolls around, where the focus is more so on Vince McMahon and Triple H, Test is kind of left out of the equation. Here's this girl he was engaged to, and she gets drugged and kidnapped and married to some other guy. He gets beat up a bit, and then that's it. He's like, all right, I guess I lost. I guess, I guess I shouldn't care anymore about it. And then he becomes a bad guy. Like, we can't even sympathize for him. I think, he could have been a face that could have kept going. Test, even if they didn't want to put Test in the limelight and have him feud with Triple H, because obviously the focus was to give the title back to Triple H and have him start this like regime where no one could stop them. It would have been interesting to see Test try to rise up against that with other people, because even if Test wasn't the one coming out on top, he could at least be there to help other people, and you could cheer for him, like, yeah, you stole his girl, like, that's messed up. They didn't do that, and who knows why that they didn't do that. It could have been any other factors, because it's wrestling, and sometimes, there's other things going on that cause, angles to change and stuff like that. But, Armageddon, Triple H beats Vince McMahon. I mistakenly said Test last Let's Play, and someone corrected me on that, and I thank you for that. And I put a little note there. But Test was at the Armageddon pay-per-view, albeit not in the actual pay-per-view itself, but he was defeated by Al Snow in a singles match taped for Sunday Night Heat. So here, at the end of this pay-per-view, you have this big culmination of really what it was all about. Triple H stealing Steph, but Steph being in on it all the time, and Test is losing to Al Snow for a Sunday Night Heat taping. So there goes your, 15 minutes of fame, Test. You could have been a main event player for the rest of 2000, but it doesn't go that way, and that's why I wanted to choose Test and play as him. Yeah, I know he wins the European title, and that's another reason. And given the times people have held it, and since it being a short belt, you know, he's actually like, you know, top 10 of people who've held it for a while. But I just think that's very interesting how quickly you can be, you know, seemingly on your way up to being, you know, at least not main event, but like right under the main event, and then just a week later doing something completely opposite. And that's always bothered me about wrestling. It's weird, like they only acknowledge history when it's convenient and then dismiss it every other time. You know, like recently I was watching an episode of Raw, you know, actually, you know, today I was watching Raw, and like it was the Raw reunion. And I actually do a I do a Royal Rumble 2015 prediction video. That should be up either before or right when this video comes out. So check that out also, because Royal Rumble's this Sunday. Well, Big Show came out when Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels were out in the ring. And, you know, it's hard now these days for the Big Show because he's been around for so long, and one minute he's a good guy, one minute he's a bad guy. There's no consistency there. But every time they make him a bad guy, they always gotta find a reason why we should be booing him. You know what I mean? He's been around for so long, and he's been a bad guy, and he's been a good guy so many different times. But what I really liked about this moment was that he came out with against three guys who at one point were sort of his peers. You know, and I think it was very funny that he came out. And I know he really came out because they wanted to put over Roman Reigns, but it was really significant that he came out, because when he came out, he started talking about how when he came into the business, he kind of stole the spotlight from these guys. Like, that's how he made his impact. He beat Hogan right when he came in WCW for the world title. And, you know, Hogan was always scared of that. You know, he beat Ric Flair, you know, the great legend Ric Flair in WCW. And, you know, Flair never really got one over on him. And then when he came to the WWF, he told Shawn Michaels, you know, at Raw, you know, this was at Raw, he told Shawn Michaels, you weren't there. I wonder why. Like, you probably weren't there because you knew you couldn't handle me being there, or you would have, you know, gotten beat up anyway. You would have just gotten in my way. And I thought that was great that he was bringing up history, because there's a lot of history in wrestling, and we don't forget. The fans don't forget. I mean, you might forget, like, if it's been a while, or, you know, it wasn't a memorable, you know, event. But a lot of these, like, big storylines, you kind of remember all the players involved. I mean, I would imagine everyone who remembers the McMahon-Helmsley thing, you remember the beginnings of it, and you remember it was Tess that was with Stephanie McMahon, because that was the whole big deal. They're in the ring, they're about to get married, Triple H shows up, he has the video, you know, and changes everything. And there was Test. Test was the guy. And here we are, like, a few weeks later, we're just supposed to forget about that Test was even involved in this whole thing, which would be like one of the biggest things to happen in wrestling in a while, this whole McMahon-Helmsley thing. I don't know, it was weird, but you still see a lot of that now. Like, you know, they kind of did it with the Wyatts, you know, like all of a sudden the Wyatts just not together. Whatever. That was my fear with the Shield, but the Shield has actually been, you know, very interesting how they've handled them breaking up, and I've actually liked how they've handled their breakup. But you know, we're supposed to forget so and so, like, just kind of forget, like, so and so was a world champ. Like, Miz main evented Royal WrestleMania, and he comes out now, and, you know, he has his gimmick with you know, Damian Sandow, and he's really seen as a mid-card player. The dude main evented WrestleMania, and he brought it up like a few months ago. He brought it up. He's like, oh, remember when I beat you, Cena, at WrestleMania, this and that. Like, you kind of never forget. And I always think it's silly how they try to not acknowledge certain wrestlers, you know, involvement with certain angles. It's like, give them that nudge, because if you give them that nudge, they'll stay relevant without being part of the angle. Okay, maybe you didn't want Test part of it, but like, don't just completely take it away from him. Like, we're all supposed to forget about it. Maybe they could have eased it out of it. If they wanted to turn him heel, it could have been a smoother transition, more of a build-up over the few months. Like, you know, first he's trying to do the right thing and he's being a good guy, and then like he keeps losing and getting shafted. So now he's like very frustrated and angry. And this is a guy who had his fiance stolen from him. Like, there was a lot there they could have done with Test. And again, I don't know all the happenings behind the scenes, so maybe there was something else causing him not to get that kind of like big storyline push off of the main, you know, storyline, which was happening with Triple H and Stephanie. But hindsight's 2020, and whatever. Test had a pretty mediocre year. You know, after Armageddon, you know, he was in the Royal Rumble. He was number 10. He was eliminated by Big Show. He wasn't at the No Way Out pay-per-view. In WrestleMania 2000, that's when he was teaming up with Albert, and Trish Stratus was managing them, and they were TNA, and that's what's represented in this game. And it's very accurate because they pretty much were TNA the whole year. Actually, Trish Stratus, I believe, appeared in the WWE like a few weeks before Mania, and she was like scouting out talent, and she chose Test and Albert, and she called them TNA because, get it, wink wink, nudge nudge. And here I go, I'm interfering in the IC match. I gotta make the IC champion win again, which is very easy, of course, because you come in with the special. And it's very easy to time the grapples. You know, you can always assume, like, if the computer you're beating up gets up groggy, it's always safe to assume the computer you're helping is going to go for a grapple, and then you can just do a double team move right then and there. So, you know, as you saw a little bit before, we did the double team power bomb. And then you just kind of play the waiting game. You just kind of hope you keep doing enough double team moves and enough strong grapples that eventually the computer will get the point and pin them. You can't really force the computer to pin them. I do notice that usually the computer will pin after they do their special, obviously. Oh, excuse me. I don't like to cough when I do these things. Or when you do like a double team move, because the double team moves do a lot of damage in this game, and it can suck to be on the receiving end when you're doing those handicap matches, because you know it's just taking out a lot of damage. But like right here, I'm pretty sure if Benoit goes for the pin, you know, I wish he does. Look at that. See, he read my mind. Oh, but Val Venus kicked out. Son of a bitch. He's just got too much fight in him. But yeah, you saw he went for the pin, at least, because they'll usually try to go for the pin after the double team moves, because they know the double team moves are very effective. And I picked them up so that Benoit can do the suplexes, because again, when the computer's gonna be groggy, the computer's gonna go for the grapple, and the computer's always gonna try to go for their special. And I just thought it was really cool. He's gonna pick him up again, because I think he's gonna try to turn him around and do another special, but he couldn't get it off in time, so now the computer doesn't know what to do. So I try to help him out again, do another double team move, and it's really interesting that the computer pulls him away from the ropes, because I feel like if he would have went for the pin where he was, it wouldn't have been a rope break. But I guess it's programmed that the computer has to make sure they're completely cleared from the ropes. If you know what I would have done, I would have just jumped over to the other side, you know, to the head side, because you just lay down and then his legs and arms aren't spread out, so you can just go for an easy pin. So this being the second path, I have to lose the next two matches in order to go into the final match, and that's how this path breaks out. So you're gonna see me lose these next two matches. So yeah, let me go back to the year in review. So Test, TNA, they were at WrestleMania. They defeated Head Cheese, which was Al Snow and Steve Blackman. And then pretty much this is it. They're like, this is his whole year. It's him and TNA. At Backlash, TNA defeated the Dudley Boys in a regular tag team match. At Insurrection and Judgment Day, I'm sure they were still wrestling a lot, but they didn't make the pay-per-views. King of the Ring, Test was in the tournament, the first round of the tournament. And here's, this is, actually I should say something real quick. So I'm out there and I'm trying to get a weapon. This is really funny. I'm trying to get a weapon, right? So that I can lose by DQ. And then Christian runs in and ruins everything, because then they start double teaming. So I'm like, alright, I gotta get a weapon because I gotta hit Val Venus to get a DQ. And I didn't realize this until after the match. I was like, wait a minute, count out was on. I could have just stayed outside and gotten count out. Oh my goodness, I do that sometimes. I like have these brain farts where it's like, you could have done this a lot easier, but you didn't. And so like this whole match, I keep going to pick it up, and there it looked like I was about to hit Val Venus, and somehow Christian blocked it and he countered it. After a while, I just kind of give in and I just let them keep beating me up, and I'm like, whatever guys, just put me away. You got Val Venus over there taunting. Like I could have made a comeback if I needed to win this match, but I'm just trying to pick up the belt. I'm just trying to pick up a weapon so I can get myself DQ'd so I could lose the match, and they won't let me. So it's really funny, and I could have just been, the match could have been over by now. It could have been counted out. Oh well. So yeah, Test was in the King of the Ring tournament, but like, they did the tournament, like they did the first few rounds on like Raws and SmackDown. So he lost in the first round to Chris Jericho. So the actual pay-per-view, it was like a 4 corners elimination match for the tag team championship between Edge and Christian, Too Cool, which was Grandmaster Sexy and Scotty 2 Hotty, the Hardy Boys, and TNA. And TNA went into this match kind of feuding with the Hardy Boys because Lita and Trish was feuding. And it's very interesting that I think the whole purpose of TNA was kind of to get Trish over, because a lot of the times they feuded with teams where Trish would feud with someone. Yeah, I mean, I just honestly think that's probably why they put them together, to put Trish over, because Trish would become like one of the top women wrestlers in the WWE. But she had to start from somewhere, so they had to like just basically, she was kind of, she started out as a heel and then later on she become a face, but yeah, they lose that match because Edge and Christian retain the titles, or they get it back, actually. They get it back from Too Cool. Then at Fully Loaded, the Hardy Boys and Lita take on TNA and Trish in a 6-person mixed tag team match, and the Hardy Boys and Lita win that one. SummerSlam, Test actually didn't wrestle on the SummerSlam, but he did interfere in the Hardcore Championship match between Shane McMahon and Steve Blackman. And like here's where like they kind of hinted back at the beginning where like Test and Shane kind of had a relationship, because they were cool, and it was like, yeah man, we're cool man, you're gonna be my brother-in-law soon. And so TNA, they try to help Shane McMahon beat Steve Blackman at this pay-per-view, but I believe Steve Blackman won. I think this is the pay-per-view where Shane McMahon fell off the Titantron, which was a really big spot for him. Took a big bump, and that really put him over as someone people didn't expect to put his body on the line the way he did. So yeah. Also, King of the Ring 2000 had just one of the best matches. I think it was King of the Ring 2000. It might have been 2001. I should have looked that up. But the Shane McMahon Kurt Angle match at the King of the Ring, whichever one it was, 2000, 2001. It was probably 2001. Oh, mwah, beautiful. Love that match. Anyway. So at Unforgiven, the next pay-per-view, Test was involved with the Hardcore Championship mini battle royal that Steve Blackman was the champion, and it had Saturn, Test, Crash, Holly, Al Snow, and Funaki, and it was the hardcore, invitational battle royal. It was basically like they got 10 minutes, but whoever's the champion by the end of it, is the champion, I guess. That's the best way to put it. Test did not win the title during that match. It did change hands a few times, but Test didn't grab it. Actually, Test, you know, his history with the Hardcore Championship is kind of interesting because he was the last Hardcore Champion before it went 24/7. He lost to Crash Holly, and then that's when Crash Holly made it the 24/7 title. So Test has that going for him at least. And No Mercy 2000, the pay-per-view, the APA and Lita took on Test and Trish Stratus in a 6-person tag team match. Well, actually, I should say they were supposed to, but something happened where, like, you know, it just didn't happen. TNA were fighting in the back, and they attacked the Acolytes, and then they came out to gang up on Trish, and then the Hardy Boys came out. So the match never really happened. Yeah. I don't like no finish, like, you know, matches that don't finish at pay-per-views, but whatever, it happens all the time. And it wasn't really an important match. It was TNA and APA. Who cares? I mean, not who cares, but I don't want to, like, disrespect like that, but, like, it wasn't. It was just another thing to forward the Trish and Lita feud, really. Survivor Series 2000. Steve Blackman, Crash Holly, and Molly Holly. And Molly Holly's kind of like debut. She just appeared recently, and guess what? She's feuding with Trish. So they have a 6-person mixed tag team match, TNA and Trish, against Steve Blackman, Crash Holly, and Molly Holly, and TNA loses. So Test didn't have such a great year. So why am I doing a Let's Play with him? Well, his moveset's really cool. And, you know, I wanna, you know, I don't wanna just do the same old people. And honestly, I think this is a perfect example of how you kind of forget that sometimes these titles don't have the most prestigious, you know, history attached to it. You know, Test would win the European title after he breaks up from TNA. You know, Albert turns on him, and shortly thereafter he captures the European title and has a mini feud with Eddie Guerrero. But then after that, you know, he just kind of bounces around, he floats around, you know, really embodiment of like a mid-carder who just can't break out of the mid-card position. Unfortunately, Test is no longer with us, like a lot of wrestlers in this game. And it's always kind of sad to play as a wrestler who, you know, passed away. Obviously, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Test, Crash Holly. You know, there's quite a few guys who are in this game who were part of the active roster. And looking back on it, not you know, just 15 years later, a lot of them are gone. British Bulldog, Viscera, right? Viscera passed, right? Yeah, I think he did. I hope I'm not saying that and like he didn't. He's gonna put on a comment on YouTube, you know, that he didn't pass. But yeah, you know, it is kind of sad, and you know, I guess this is a way to kind of remember him. You know, as silly as that might sound, you know, and as passionate I might get about, you know, some of these angles not making sense. At the end of the day, you gotta realize, like, these guys really put their bodies out on the line and really gave it their all. And it's not easy being a wrestler, regardless if you're, you know, the world champion or the European champion. So I guess that's why I played as Test. I mean, his moveset is great. I really like his moveset, and I really did at one time think he was gonna be a top player, and I was excited about that prospect, but you know, it didn't happen. Like I said, I think in my first European video, not everyone can be the world champion. You know, everyone's got to play their role, play their part, and that's just how it is sometimes. I know it's kind of somber to think about, but you know, there's a lot more meat to the European title after this. You know, I'm gonna do a Shawn Michaels playthrough, Christian, Matt Hardy, X-Pac, Eddie Guerrero, D'Lo Brown, Triple H, and the British Bulldog. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And again, the European title itself was just a weird title. I don't think they really knew what they wanted to do with it long term. I think it was really created for a short term thing, and there's a lot of weird moments, you know, where it does mean a lot, where it doesn't mean a lot, you know. It makes you wonder why they would do that to a title, number one. Number two, you know, history kind of repeats itself. You know, my Royal Rumble prediction video, I was talking about how I never like it when a champion loses in an exhibition match. I think it's silly for a champion to get pinned or submit straight up in an exhibition match unless there's a perfect reason to do it. And a lot of the times, especially now, there's not a good reason. A title should mean something, and especially when you create a title, it should mean something. And that's always been my beef with the European title. They wanted it to be this kind of second intercontinental title, this second title that means something, but it didn't, because you still had the intercontinental title, and they kind of became interchangeable at that point. And I think that, I mean, if you really look at it, it was kind of like the slow downward spiral to the titles meaning less and less. You know, honestly, let's be real about it. Like, you know, not disrespecting a lot of the champions that would come later, but when you have two titles that kind of mean the same thing, then they kind of both lose their importance. Because it's like, alright, well, I'm going to lose the European title, well, I'm going to go get the Intercontinental title. Test is another perfect example of it. I mean, he was involved when he won the IC title, right? He only held it for a few days, and then he loses it because it gets unified. When he won the, you know, I forgot which one he wins first, but he wins one tag title with Booker T. They lose it really quick, and then like a week or two later, they win the other tag title. It's like there's no weight to these victories. So, if anything, Test is a perfect example of how inconsistent wrestling can be. And I guess that's why I played as him, because, you know, never forget that sometimes wrestling makes no sense, and you just gotta keep going forward and hope that they get back to trying to make sense of things, because that's when it is most entertaining. And, you know, Test never really recaptured that momentum he had when he was involved with the McMahon-Helmsley kind of feud going on. So this is my Test playthrough. It was pretty quick because it's pretty simple. Losing 2 matches in a row makes things go a lot faster. I hope you enjoy it. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, check out my Royal Rumble prediction video. And yeah, I will see you around. It'll be a little bit before I upload my next European title, but please be patient. My schedule is kind of crazy, but I will do my best to get these out to you. So yeah, have fun, watch wrestling, WWE Network, you gotta subscribe, and have a good day.